From courtside the virtual hardwood, it's the NLSC Podcast, a weekly show for basketball gamers and hardcore hoopheads. This is episode 597. I'm Andrew in our forum, Andrew NLSC on X and Blue Sky. I'm joined as always by my co-host Derek, DP3 in the forum, and DP3G and DP384 on X. Derek, another NBA season is looming, but of course, we're balling all year round on the virtual hardwood, and we're eager to discuss it, so please, tip us off.
Yeah, and down go the Nuggets, Andrew. We played a game on our NBA 2K9 association yesterday using the Chicago Bulls. And, we were a little nervous going into that one because the Nuggets in that season have, Allen Iverson and Carmelo Anthony and Kenyon Martin and the always dangerous J.R. Smith. And we took that challenge head on. And, they made it close at the end, but we took them down and we're on a winning streak. And Derrick Rose had a 2020 game where he had 25 points and 21 assists. That was a fun game. And I feel like we've really pulled it together on NBA 2K9 in our association. And we're now fourth in the East.
A lot of momentum. Yeah. Big win over the Warriors. That felt great. Like you say, a bit of concern going against those Nuggets with Allen Iverson currently leading that association in scoring with about 31 points per game, if I recall correctly. But yeah, we took them down, had a big lead at points during the game. They did cut into that lead towards the end there when we maybe were going for highlights or took our foot off the pedal a little bit, but still won fairly comfortably. Feeling good about our chances. A couple of players on the team not really gelling. Drew Gooden, Larry Hughes still on the trading block at this point, but Tyrese Thomas earning his keep, looking like he could be an integral part of the team, as I hoped he would be in real life, and of course he wasn't, unfortunately. But yeah, definitely a couple of fun wins there.
How about Luol Deng with 39 points?
Out of nowhere.
In the win against Denver, and that brought his average up to about 17 points a game. A ball hawk in that game, had a few steals, getting in the passing lane with him. I just love how organic the action is in NBA 2K9. I made a post about this after our game stating that it's definitely one of my favorite 2Ks of all time. I know that it's risen up your ranks as well. I mean, where do you put this now? In your list of favorite basketball games of all time, because I know you're having a blast, and this game is great for co-op. And I definitely agree that it's a jump, a significant jump over 2K8 as it relates to gameplay.
Yeah, it's tough. You mentioned in our chat that you would probably put it as a top 5 NBA 2K game, or might put it as a top 5 NBA 2K game in the series. I'm not sure, because 2K13 to 2K17 is a run that I really like. That's a really strong run of 5 games. But if we're just talking about the 7th generation, the PS3, Xbox 360 generation, I think it might be top 5, maybe top 3. I really am enjoying it a lot. And as far as my all-time favorite games, maybe it is getting towards the top 25. I need to look at that and do another top 25 at some point, because a couple of games have moved around, risen up the rankings, a couple of new old favorites, as the case may be. So it might be there, or certainly knocking on the door. Really am enjoying NBA 2K9. When we ranked our 7th gen NBA 2K games, I ranked it low by default, as I've said before. But yeah, we went back and did that now. I think top 5, certainly, of that generation. And it's up there in general. With that in mind, where would you rank it? Would you rank it top 5 of all 2Ks, or just for that 7th generation?
I mean, certainly for the 7th generation. I'd have to sit down and really think about it. Because like you stated, 2K11, 2K12, 2K13, 2K14, those are strong games in the 2K series. And then obviously 2K15 is underrated. We love that motion system. 2K16 and 17, etc. I think definitely top 5 for a 7th generation. I'd have to think about where it is all time, but yeah, I just love that game. I love the presentation. I love how organic the action feels. I love the control overall on the sticks, despite not having right stick dribbling. I love the fact that it doesn't feel cheesy, right? And it doesn't feel like there's computer assistance that's constantly getting in the way of the action, right? There's not as much push-pull as there is with a game like NBA 2K8, which really frustrated you, right? So, yeah, I would have to think about it. I just know that I'm having a blast in that association, and we're 14 games in now. And I think we're actually going to finish a full 82 game season on that. I do want to say that Nocioni has stepped it up. He is not on the trading block, but I think we're going to have to move Larry Hughes at some point.
Yeah, the lack of right stick dribbling is definitely a knock on the game, in my book, because I love that right stick dribbling. I am getting more used to it, being able to make some moves, but yeah, I do miss having those right stick moves. It is, of course, you can make the hands up on defense and other moves with the right stick, and of course, different shot styles as well, because it is the shot stick, but yeah, I do miss those dribbling controls. Organic is the big thing. You don't have a lot of canned moments, or at least there's sufficient smoke and mirrors to hide what's going on under the hood. Some really great blocks. Just really satisfying to block a shot off the backboard or jam it into the side of the rim with Noah. We've had a couple of those. The numbers. I love that we're putting up the numbers very organically, not going for numbers. We weren't trying to give Luol Deng a huge game. He was just hitting. He was just working out with him, so we just kept going to him, and it was working. So we ended up having a big night. Love it when that happens. I mean, I have gone for stats before in games, as I know you have as well, but when it happens organically like that, it's so satisfying. It feels realistic. I also wanted to point out before we move on, there's a line on commentary about Anthony Randolph, who was an NLSC Forum favourite back in the day. One of those players that was looked upon as possibly being the next big thing or a possible superstar, in part because he often developed into one in games and people enjoyed using him. But the commentary compares him to Kevin Durant, which in hindsight is an exaggeration, to say the least. But it goes back to what we've said so many times about games being interactive almanacs and such a time capsule of what the NBA was like at the time, what they're saying on commentary about the players, the anecdotes they're sharing, talking about players being future stars, and of course they're talking about Derrick Rose being this big addition to the Bulls and what a bright future he has, and that's kind of bittersweet considering what happened. But you go back and you hear these stories and you remember, oh yeah, this guy was pegged as being this underrated potential next big thing. And sometimes it pans out and sometimes it doesn't. But that was a fun flashback for me because, like I said, Anthony Randolph was a Forum favourite.
I told you in the chat when I heard that commentary in the game that it reminded me of a comparison, which is just as crazy, of, Dragon Bender to Dirk Nowitzki. I remember when Dragon Bender was drafted and they were talking about comparisons and they were like, he could be a Nowitzki type player. Other comparisons were like Porzingis, right? And whatnot. And what happened with Dragon Bender? His game was nothing like those guys.
A huge bust.
So anyway, we'll continue having fun with that 2K9 season. You'll see more highlights on the NLSC YouTube and on the forums and whatnot. But today's episode, Andrew, will be centered around how we are playing NBA 2K26. This includes modes and style. I also asked the community how they are currently playing this game, and if not playing 2K26, what other basketball games they're playing and how. But first, Andrew, I've had people asking me questions about the way I play, including asking if I had any sliders they could try out, etc. This made me want to do a quick 2K26 tip section on today's show. I've already put over 50 hours into this game, so I've put in a lot of time on the controls. I also want to say that 50 hours into a game, I think, you could say I've already gotten my money's worth.
Sure.
Right? So I've obviously had critiques of this game. I think it's disappointing that, we basically recycled the same motion system for the last 6 to 8 years, for NBA 2K. And I think that lack of innovation, I think that's what's made the product most stale as it relates to people's feel on the sticks, people's reactions to the current gameplay and whatnot. So anyway, let's start with slider suggestions. Try playing with body up sensitivity at 0 for both user and CPU. The more I have played the game, the more I have tinkered with things, the more I have realized that this slider still works. It just doesn't work as well as some past games. However, setting this at 0 will help with reducing some of the unrealistic suction and bumping that takes place. Fatigue rate, turn down to 35. At 50, your players get tired far faster than players in real life. You will find that putting the slider at 35 makes it so players can play longer and won't become useless so fast. Contact sliders for driving and inside and close shots. The amount of misses at the rim this year are almost unmatched in 2K history. If you reduce these sliders, it can create a more realistic balance on the floor as it relates to how often contact prevents you from making a shot. This is especially important when playing on Superstar or Hall of Fame. Maybe try reducing each of these sliders by 10 and keep reducing until you get the results you want. The next one is turn your foul sliders down. And the reason why I say this is there is so much canned contact in the paint that oftentimes there's more fouls than even happen in real life. Actually, sometimes far more, and it can get super frustrating. Maybe lower your foul sliders by 10 or 15 for each one, whether it's, over the back, reach in fouls, etc. It'll create a more realistic balance as it relates to free throws, and it will make the action oftentimes less frustrating on the floor, less stoppages, etc. I also want to point out that this obviously wouldn't help people online where they can't tweak sliders, or in my team. This is purely for those, people who want to mess with sliders for offline gameplay.
Excellent suggestions all around. I'm going to have to try them. I've grown very used to playing the game vanilla, and that goes back to me spending so many years playing my career, playing online, not tinkering with those sliders. Something I used to do a lot back in the day. I've fallen out of that habit, and that's probably why I haven't enjoyed games as much in recent years. Obviously, there's other issues as well, but I've kind of thrown up my hands and not tried to play with the sliders, so that's given me something to try.
So for gameplay tips, Andrew, this is for tips for on the controls. I have about 15 or 16 of these here, so I'm just going to run through them really quick, but these might help our listeners. So right stick step backs and fadeaways are where it's at. From experience, they are often more reliable than button shooting, and if utilized correctly, it's by far the best way to create space. You can see the right stick constantly being utilized in my gameplay videos. It can also be one of the best ways to get by your man because you can break out of a step back into a crossover. However, I find that the best way to get by the CPU in the half court is your basic crossover, but make sure you go wide and go hard the other way, because with a good ball handler, you can get by your guy this way. And in mismatches do work in this game, even on the higher difficulty levels, if you do this crossover correctly. So let's say you're out on the perimeter with John Morant and there's a switch and you have Hartenstein on you. Do that crossover, small crossover, and then a really hard crossover the other way. And you can get him on your side, or you can get by him and you can get to the hoop. So this is a very important gameplay tip. Make sure, and I know this is something you struggle with, Andrew, because you're used to the old NBA Live systems, right? Like the dribbling controls. Make sure that when you're dribbling on NBA 2K26, and this is the same as it was with 2K25, use the left stick for a lot of your evasive moves, for a lot of your dribble moves and whatnot, for changing direction. I know that sometimes we're conditioned with the right stick to stand facing the basket and just wiggle that right stick around, right? To do dribbling moves and whatnot, and to execute an explosive crossover. All of that. But oftentimes the best way to get by the CPU and to mix up your dribbles and to do different things is to use that left stick in order to move the ball to the other hand, in order to change directions and whatnot. Sometimes the left stick can be your best friend when it comes to getting around a defender or getting by the defense. So, try to use your left stick more on dribbles in this game than you ever have in the past. I'm not saying go away from the right stick, because you can do a lot of awesome things with it. You can initiate size ups. You can create your own size ups. All of that stuff. You can still execute crossovers. But man, that left stick is very important this year with dribbling. So experiment with that. Another gameplay recommendation is, and you don't have to do this because I know that, Andrew, you play a little different in this way, but if you're using broadcast cam, try a camera relative. For me and my brothers, camera out relative has just always made more sense as it relates to doing dribble moves or other moves in general, because it goes by the way your player is positioned on the screen. So there's 3 different absolute settings related to the right stick in your controller configuration. Try switching all of those to camera relative to see if that gives you a better experience on broadcast cam. As it relates to fast breaks, one of the best ways to get by a defender or get through the defense in general is by going behind the back when you start getting closer to said defender. It allows your momentum to shift fast enough where you can often push by the defense for a score. Another way is to use your defender's body against them. If you execute a spin move right as you make contact with them, you will spin directly off of their body and be wide open on the other side. Another big gameplay tip is outlet and run. While the CPU is faster in this game than 2K25, it's important to get out and run. Outlet immediately off the boards. If you have quick guards, you can sometimes get by the CPU down the sidelines if you push the ball hard, creating an easy path to the basket. Use your mismatches. Guys like Holmgren, Wemby, Jaren Jackson Jr., Anthony Davis, etc. are incredibly overpowered in this game, Andrew, due to their badges combined with the game's constant suction and invisible walls. Playing against OKC, try to attack Hartenstein. Playing the Spurs, go at Harrison Barnes, who they have slotted in at power forward. You can also get switches by calling for picks on the ball. However, if you want to score on those guys, the Wembys, the Holmgrens, etc., and have a strong enough big, call a quick play to get them into the post, back them all the way down under the basket, and drop step. If you are close enough, as in right under the rim, sometimes you can finish. Speaking of quick plays, use them. Use floppy, receive screen, ISO, and post up. Why? Because if you are not using these plays during the game, oftentimes there's too much clutter. If you don't call for an ISO, you will not have the space to operate. If you don't call the quick post up, your area will be congested and your post entry may get stolen, or you will have more coverage than you should. Another very important tip, use your picks. And I recommend running high pick and roll, high pick and pop, etc. Because in this game, it's one of the best ways to free yourself from your defender. It's also one of the best ways for you to get shots off in the mid-range and get downhill to the hoop. More often than not, the pick and roll aspect doesn't work because of how fast the CPU defense moves. But more often than not, the player trying to guard the ball gets caught on that pick. They actually get suctioned right to it. And what that does is that creates ample room for you to get off a mid-range shot and get to the rim. Screens off ball, same thing. If you run floppy, and when the screen is set, that defender that's chasing the offensive player is going to get caught on that screen, and then you should be able to get a decent look at the hoop. And this is also another good opportunity for you to use that new catch and shoot mechanic. But Andrew, we know how often teams run high pick and roll in today's NBA. We know how often that play has been used for decades and whatnot. Utilize it as often as you can, and I think that you'll be rewarded. The next one is when posting up with a strength or height advantage, or if you are using a good offensive player in general who has a little size, try turning in quickly to the center of the paint without holding the back trigger. I know that we're conditioned with these 2K controls that post up is the back trigger, but if your back is already to the basket when you catch the ball, you can just turn in, and it's far quicker than if you were holding down the trigger and trying to do kind of a canned turn. So basically what you'll do is you'll catch the ball and turn in. Oftentimes you just slip right off the defender and have an easy dunk or layup. As mentioned before, another gameplay tip is please use your icon passing. Andrew, I know you love icon passing.
Yep.
We're using it constantly in NBA 2K9. It's crazy to think there were games at one point where we didn't have icon passing, which is true. We did.
Yeah.
It's I use it all the time now. But anyway, if you don't use icon passing, you will make a lot of turnovers in this game. The defense is unrealistically fast, and there are a ton of canned steals in the passing lanes, or even out of the passing lanes, because the CPU is often suctioned to the ball unnaturally. When it makes sense, use the new catch and shoot mechanic by holding the back left trigger and pressing the shoot button. You get the ball out quicker, and it can be the difference between an open shot and a full contest. The next one is stop jumping for blocks and lunging for steals, because this game is so animation heavy, it puts you out of position more often than not, which allows easy buckets by the CPU. Use right stick defense to contest the majority of shots around the rim and on the perimeter. Also, do not go for any steals on the ball, because it's press steal to foul 99% of the time. The best way to get steals in this game is to jump into passing lanes by either using the steal button or by using the right stick off-ball steal system. However, another way to get steals is, once again similar to 2K25, sticking your body on the side of a ball handler and pressing the steal button. While yes, your hand, your forearm, sometimes your body will go directly through the ball at times you can still get some of these steals.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask if you'd found a way to reduce press steal to foul with the slider settings, but I guess not.
How disappointing is it to have a game with such poor steal mechanics that was released in 2025 when you have a game like NBA Live 06, NBA 2K17, etc., where you could get realistic steals while they were holding the ball, right?
Why
when they weren't holding the ball,
why having a steal button?
You can, yeah, exactly. I mean, it's really silly that you can have an offensive player just standing there holding the ball in front of them, and you swipe for a realistic steal, and it's an immediate foul, or your hand goes through the ball, or the CPU unnaturally jerks away, completely unrealistic, etc. Like, the steal system is very poor, in my opinion.
Ridiculous. As
it relates to getting steals on ball. Now, I will say this. Getting steals off ball is often rewarding, jumping in the passing lanes and whatnot. Yeah, it's not that bad, but on ball, it's criminally bad. Like, I think it's a terrible on ball steal system. So moving on, try your best to give the offensive player on the perimeter at least 3 feet of space if you are trying to guard the ball. Because if you play too close and he gets by you, you are cooked. Your defense will collapse and it will be an open three, and the CPU rarely misses open looks. So, Andrew, in this game, shot timing is often later than past games. For most players, from my experience, if you're having trouble hitting with a player, try releasing the button or joystick late. Jab steps still work to create enough space for a good look. Try using a jab step, especially if you have a shooter with a height advantage, to create a little space and then fire away. The next one is make sure your offensive play calling is set to auto in your coach settings. That way your players go into motion. If you don't have this on auto, your players are often stagnant. So make sure that that's set to auto so players are at least moving. Instead of pulling back on the right stick on drives, try just using the button for dunking. I gave this advice to Teddy Bear the Gamer, and it's working great for him. You can get plenty of poster dunks using the button, and it often works far better than the right stick. When pulling back on the right stick on drives, a meter will show. Sometimes it will have a green window that you can land in to complete the dunk. However, the way the meter works is if defense comes in at the last second that wasn't there when you originally pulled back on the trigger, that green window disappears, and you will now miss the dunk. You will miss a lot of dunks if you pull the right stick back on drives. Stick to button. Layup timing feels like it's mostly early, so when doing a layup or little flip shots around the rim, try releasing the button early. And the last one, Andrew, is try playing this game on pro. Don't feel guilty because you're just playing it on the default setting. If the frustrations mount the higher you go up with difficulty levels, why do that to yourself? It doesn't make any sense. If you feel like you're playing a more realistic game of basketball, a more fun game of basketball by playing on the default difficulty level, which is pro, I absolutely recommend sticking with that, because the games could still be competitive, and you could put up better highlights and just make more realistic plays and whatnot, and it could limit your frustrations. So that's it for the gameplay stuff. I did want to state that I wanted to give one camera suggestion. So, for those looking for a broadcast cam alternative, try nosebleeds, height 1, zoom 1, key zoom on. And the reason is because the regular broadcast cam in this game, not broadcast stadium, which is used for the current teams, but the regular broadcast cam that was so perfect in 2K25 and adjustable and awesome, it's messed up this year. It's messed up for the classic teams. It's not consistent. It's messed up in general. So, that broadcast cam alternative gives you a pretty good look at the action from that side view, and I would recommend that. I also want to point out, before I throw it back to you, Andrew, that a lot of those gameplay tips that I mentioned work for offline and online, right? So, some of the stuff I was stating with moves, stick stuff, all of that, some of that will translate to you if you are an online player. So hopefully this stuff helps.
Oh, I'm sure it will. Some excellent tips across the board there. Making use of those contextual animations and moves when posting up or driving, making those crossovers with the left stick rather than the right stick. That's something that you've told me on many occasions, and I'm trying to keep that in mind. In older games as well, in older NBA 2K games, that's also worked very effectively, so I've been trying to make greater use of that. It's very important, as you pointed out to me, to not overuse the right stick, because it doesn't work. It's not effective. That green window, that goes back to what I've said so many times about green or miss. How if the green window can disappear when the defense comes in really late, that is a broken mechanic. That takes away the skill gap, the supposed skill gap, because how can you time that correctly when the CPU can just step in at the last minute and completely take that away in the middle of your timing release, or a human opponent, as the case may be. As far as the camera settings, a lot of people have really been appreciative of that. Funnily enough, when I shared some of your recent gameplay footage on our socials, there was the usual comment about broadcast camera, right, Derek? Someone says, this angle is trash. If you play on this angle, you should just quit the game. I do not understand the bias against broadcast views in a basketball video game or any sports game. That is how we consume the sport. That is how we view the sport on TV. That's how the sport looks to us. It's something that we wanted for years, that authentic presentation, that authentic camera style. I understand playing from quote-unquote gameplay angles. I played with the My Career default angle in My Career and the connected modes. I like that view behind the player, focused on the player. In fact, that's one of my complaints with the equivalent cameras in NBA Live. They don't focus on the player, they focus on the ball, so you lose track of where your player is. That's what I like about those camera angles when you're playing player locked, that they are focused on your player. Otherwise, I do like broadcast views. It's just so pathetic to judge somebody on the camera angle that they play, and a perfectly reasonable and logical camera angle to use. So whenever I see that, I really blow my eyes. That's just pathetic.
And on that note, I mean, I posted that broadcast cam recommendation on X, and it got 17K views, 95 bookmarks, 172 likes, and a ton of support for it, right?
Yeah,
people were looking for a broadcast cam alternative. There are a lot of people that play on broadcast out there. And I actually had a good interaction with a few people related to this. And, somebody asked me, and this is a bigger account, states, why don't you all use 2K Cam? And I stated it was preference. I've played on broadcast cam for most of my life. It's also the way I've experienced the NBA all my life. All my memories NBA related are from the broadcast view. Functionality and control-wise, it makes more sense to me. And then somebody else commented, perfectly said, I think it's pros and cons to both, but I notice people have their own preferences on how to play. Some people like me and you like to play like we're watching the game, and people in 2K usually like to view it as if they're on the court. And I stated there's no right or wrong way to play. Happy that we have all the camera options to choose from. And the original person that commented stated that I always thought that 2K Cam is for online competitive players and broadcast cam is for offline simulation players. And I stated, I think that both cameras have strengths and weaknesses and could be used for either. In my opinion, broadcast cam gives you a better view of your distance between players and a better view of your distance to the baseline. And 2K Cam allows you to see further down the court. But this was a very positive interaction.
I saw that
with these 2K players. And I think that's the way it should be.
Absolutely.
Right? I think the person that says it's trash or something like that is either a teenager possibly, just kind of lashing out. Or somebody just who doesn't know how to communicate properly or potentially also not seeing the big picture or selfish or whatever. So, I think it's ridiculous. But I wanted to real quick get to that whole, competitive scene thing. And then we can get to more of, what I'm playing on 2K26 for modes and what the community is playing, etc. But, Andrew, so there was a tweet from a popular 2K player's account. And I feel the need to highlight this because the tweet received a lot of support from the online crowd, including people who are next makers and influencers who went to Community Day. The tweet highlighted the fact that playing in the online scene is more often than not far easier than playing the CPU offline on higher difficulty levels than pro, so All-Star, Superstar, and Hall of Fame. Which is why you see people complaining so much about sky-high field goal percentage and lack of defense online. Many of these online players were stating in this thread that when they go and play offline against the CPU, it's a reality check and it's a whole different ballgame. And they can't do half the stuff that they get away with online. And the reason for this, in my opinion, is just a poorly designed game for competitive basketball. online due to the lack of control you have with your player on defense and how fast offensive players move. You will never be able to play defense the way you should or could in real life. Due to the poor foot planning and poor collision detection, offensive players have the freedom to do whatever they want online, which is why the action looks so silly and out of control. But it brings me back to the thing that I hate, Andrew, the constant talk about the, quote, competitive scene, end quote. Playing online, according to everything that I see and what I'm reading, is easier as it relates to what you can do from an offensive standpoint. It's often not as competitive because the mechanics don't promote good or fair competition. So how are online players more superior to those who mostly play offline? It doesn't make any sense. In fact, I would argue the opposite. I'd say the people that are successful and do incredibly well on, All-Star, Superstar, and Hall of Fame are probably more skilled and versed on the sticks than the players who play exclusively online.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? Because the narrative that online gamers love to push is that we are the most skilled. We're not playing against bots. We're playing against real competition. We're playing against...
It takes so much less skill. It takes so much less skill, Andrew, because the defense can't stay in front, and you basically can just do all of these non-basketball plays, non-basketball moves, and just score constantly. It's silly.
Oh, yeah. And the CPU has certain advantages with reaction time that humans don't have, especially online when you have that latency. So once again, that's why I have issues with things like green or miss, because you have the CPU that can stick to you like glue, that can button read, that can take away that green release at the last second or constantly, whereas you do have that human error that allows you to have that space and get that green release. So that is why defensive mechanics and offensive mechanics need to be properly balanced, and I don't think they are in NBA 2K26. Certainly not in my experience so far. But yeah, that is funny that they are always talking about, you're playing against bots, you're not good on the sticks. It's the online scene, the competitive gamers that really know how to play, but they don't really know basketball, and they don't necessarily know the game either. Before we go on, a reminder that the NLSC podcast comes out every week on the NLSC, nba-live.com, as well as our YouTube channel. We're also on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and other podcast apps. If you're listening on any of those apps, we'd greatly appreciate a review. To keep up with the show and everything we're doing with basketball gaming in general, connect with us on social media. On Twitter and Facebook, we are the NLSC. We also have an Instagram, NLSC Basketball, and on YouTube, we're youtube.com/NBA Live Series Center. Once again, visit us at nba-live.com, where in addition to the podcast, you'll also find all of our original content, as well as our forum and modding community.
So, Andrew, let's get to the community question. So I asked basketball gamers, we want to know, how are you playing NBA 2K26? What modes? Are you playing online against the CPU, et cetera? And if you're not playing NBA 2K26, what basketball games are you playing and how are you playing? So I know, Andrew, that, outside of playing, with me over Parsec for one game where we controlled the Nuggets against the Hornets, you're not playing NBA 2K26.
No.
Right? Like you've put that down. You're still playing the classics. You're into NBA Live 19 right now. You're playing the NBA 2K9 Association with me, etc. But I am playing NBA 2K26, so I'm going to go real quick over how I'm playing. So we kicked off playing the game, playing Play Now, using current NBA teams. I still think that this is probably the best way to play because the Era's rosters, in my opinion, are so broken from a gameplay experience perspective, just with the ratings, the badge assignments, the signature shots, some of the art issues, but mostly just the gameplay on the floor. I just don't find those rosters playable, like at all. And it doesn't matter which of the Era's rosters. It just feels like they're all just so poorly done. So, still play now games, using current teams, having fun with that, mostly playing on Superstar now against each other with some of the slider tweaks that I mentioned. So, me versus my brother and whatnot. We also have a WNBA fantasy draft season that we started, and I think we're almost 10 games in now. And we rigged the draft, Andrew. Why? Because we just wanted to have fun with this. So I'm locked on Paige Beckers for the season. My brother Mark, huge Caitlin Clark fan. My brother Nick is locked on Griner because we always want to have somebody locked on a center. a big player, and my brother Mark is using the rest of the players, and he has players like Katie Lou Samuelson. I'm his favorite player of all time, Caitlin Clark. We have Cameron Brink, etc. So we kind of rigged our team to be a little bit overpowering, but we're playing against the CPU on Superstar 3-player co-op, and we are having a lot of fun with that. We will probably end up finishing that season. And then my brother Nick and I, we have a legend season, which we do every year, where I created the court, I created the jerseys in my NBA. We're called the NBA Goats this year. Switched it up a little bit. We have a goat as the logo in the middle of the court, but with like a light blue color scheme. I think it looks pretty cool. But again, it's like Magic Johnson, Michael Jordan, Larry Bird, Kareem, and Wilt Chamberlain in the starting lineup. And then on the bench, we have Clyde Drexler, Julius Erving, Kobe Bryant, Hakeem Olajuwon, and Shaq. And we're taking on current teams, but in order for it to still be immersive and in order for us to still get somewhat of a challenge, we played on Hall of Fame like we do every single year. So we're playing on Hall of Fame, and I uploaded a 14-minute gameplay video to the NLSC YouTube showing the highlights from the first 10 games of that season. And I think you would agree that they look pretty awesome. You can make this game look pretty good at times and whatnot. So we're having a blast with that. We're actually already 26 games into that season, 12-minute quarters. So that's a lot of games, Andrew. And then if I get the motivation, I'm going to try to mod one of my NBA Eras rosters, but there's just so much work to do on those, and the task is daunting, to be honest with you, and I'm not sure if I have enough time to dedicate to fixing up those my NBA Eras rosters. Outside of that, you and I have our NBA 2K9 association that we're playing, and that has been awesome. My brother and I actually started a season on NBA Live 2003, a legend season, and we're about a dozen games in, I want to say now. And we're playing the GameCube version, and I don't know if you noticed this, but it feels like the GameCube version, like the action is more in control. I don't know if it's just me, but it's not as frantic. It's not as out of control. It feels like the game speed is slightly less than like the PS2 version. I'd have to do like side-by-side testing. Maybe it's just me, but we're actually getting a lot of enjoyment out of that game. And I think a lot of it's because it's not as frantic, right, as we remembered from the past. So yeah, we're having a blast with that, making highlights. One of the highlights was recently in the top 10, a contact alley-oop to Michael Jordan, etc. So yeah, that's mainly what we're doing on basketball video games right now.
Yeah, it would be interesting to find out if there's any difference between the different versions of NBA Live 2003 as far as speed and other aspects. I'm guessing it's pretty similar across the board, but maybe there are some technical differences that happened when they were porting it to different platforms. Definitely something to look into. I'm not surprised to hear that you're having a blast with the co-op season. As you've said, it's something you do every year, always produces a lot of fun for you guys, a lot of great highlights to share with the community. Love seeing them, of course. And I will say that in our co-op session of NBA 2K26, I did have some fun with that. I always enjoy playing with you, of course. You were taking over some of the aspects that I struggle with, that I don't particularly like, so you were helping out. That certainly helped me have a much better time. We won that game playing with the Nuggets, had some good plays, and that was satisfying. It does go to show, as we've said before, that some games do play better co-op or head-to-head than against the CPU.
I think the reason you were able to have fun with that is because you were able to focus on rebounding, screen setting. You weren't having to create as much as it relates to with the ball, right? Or shoot, right? I think that at the end of the day, that's always going to be better because it eliminates the frustrations from you, right? And I think we should connect again and do co-op at some point on 2K26, see how you feel about it, maybe do some more slider tweaks and whatnot, because then at least you could get some enjoyment out of the game, right? Instead of putting it down for the entire cycle. I mean, you paid for the game. I'm sure you want to get some hours into it.
Of course.
So and for people, listening, that gameplay video of Andrew and I playing co-op is up on the NLSC YouTube. It's titled NBA 2K26, Nuggets versus Hornets highlights, broadcast gameplay. Thumbnail is Jokic shooting a 3 from the top of the key. which, by the way, he didn't make, Andrew.
Yeah.
But it made for a cool thumbnail. So yeah, check out that video. But yeah, before we get to the community responses, Andrew, why don't you tell us what you are playing and how you're playing?
Well, of course, I have the NBA 2K9 association with you, as we talked about at the top of the show. That continues to be a blast. I, too, think we're going to finish that season feeling very optimistic with our current form. Once again, I think we're starting to hit our stride, finding out how to use all of those players, having those organic big games. A lot of fun. Looking forward to getting through that season. I also have my Bulls Dynasty in NBA Live 16, doing the solo franchise experience, about 16, 17 games into that. That's been fun. I am disappointed at the lack of depth in Dynasty mode at that point. There aren't even any in-game injuries, so there's no risk of losing a player for a few games, unless you go really old school and pretend that there's an injury and have somebody sit out 5 to 10 games or whatever. At the moment, just enjoying a streamlined experience with it, playing a game that I didn't spend enough time with back in the day, despite enjoying playing it at the community event that I attended, the last community event that I attended for NBA Live 16, so getting a bit more of a run with that. As you said, playing NBA Live 19, and that's a bit of a surprise. I didn't expect to enjoy it as much as I have, because for a long time I've said that it was a misstep after NBA Live 18, which I really come to like, revisiting that in recent years, especially last year playing Ultimate Team with the Legends again. Unfortunately, with the server shutdown, that is no longer possible, but I've been playing with Legends in NBA Live 19 Ultimate Team. They've got some cheaper versions of Legends, some lower-rated versions of the Legends. It's an interesting approach, but it does allow you to play with some historical players a bit earlier. They do have the maxed-out editions of those cards. Very expensive. A few of them are actually still in the auction house. Seems that there's a dedicated group within the community still playing NBA Live 19 Ultimate Team. So that's pretty cool that there's still items in the auction house. Been able to grab a couple of legends there. Most recently, Clyde Drexler. Having some fun playing with those legends, playing against legends. I just finished all of the legend challenges last night. One of the early weekly challenges, playing 31 Legends games. A little bit repetitive. They really made a mess of the lineups. Whoever was handling the Ultimate Team content didn't do a great job. Actually, there's enough Legends in NBA Live 19 that you could make pretty good all-decade teams. I'm going to send you the list because I've compiled the list and I'm going to compile possible lineups that you could make, all-decade lineups. Sure, it doesn't compete with the amount of historical content in NBA 2K, but they could have done so much more and made that available offline. But of course it is exclusive to Ultimate Team, but I am enjoying playing that nevertheless. I will say that I still don't like the shooting as much as NBA Live 18. It does have the issue that I've talked about on this very show, where the green release is taken away if you are too heavily guarded or if the CPU comes over at the last minute. I hate that mechanic. It is completely unbalanced. That being said, I have gotten used to it as much as possible. I am enjoying Live 19. I will have a Way Back Wednesday revisiting that. But yeah, that's been an interesting kick for me.
I want to say that I think NBA Live 19's gameplay is too similar to Live 18 for you not to get some enjoyment out of it.
Agreed.
It has so much of the same bones, right? So that's not surprising to me that you're enjoying it for the most part. I also want to point out that, we get on 2K about their inaccuracies as it relates to my NBA Airs rosters. And it goes beyond inaccuracies. It goes, it has to do with them thinking it's low priority. It has to do with them, the people working on the rosters not knowing their history or not caring about it.
Disrespect.
It has to do with 2K being, disrespectful. It has to do with 2K not caring enough about how these teams and players play to put somebody who knows what they're doing on the rosters, whether they're paid or not, because there's a lot of people out there that would do this for free, Andrew.
Absolutely.
A lot of people out there do it for free and create rosters. So I do want to point out that it goes beyond just them being inaccurate. There's a lot more context around that, which is kind of troubling. But EA Sports with NBA Live 19 was incredibly inaccurate with their legends in my team. And that
Definitely
needs to be noted. Hakeem Olajuwon, you can't shoot with him at all from the mid-range. And he was a knockdown mid-range shooter. Do not take a mid-range shot with him. You'll never hit it in NBA Live 19. When the game was first released and you jumped into my team, and I noted this at the time, Clyde Drexler couldn't dunk.
Yep.
That's right, folks. Clyde Drexler couldn't dunk.
Quite a few players.
And there was a bunch of other, Ultimate Team players, legends that, just they couldn't dunk. And that was released. right? People were playing that. That's embarrassing, and it's disrespectful. And you look at the ratings across the board on the Legends, and the people at EA Sports that were working on these rosters considered it low priority, you can tell, and they didn't know what they were doing. So, both companies are at fault there, and it's pretty disappointing. It's disrespectful, and I think it's stupid. I think it's absolutely stupid and lazy, because they absolutely could get somebody with basketball knowledge, knowledge of the history of the game, to work on these legends, to work on the rosters, all of that stuff, and make it more accurate and more fun and less disrespectful.
And as we've noted before, this actually goes back decades. There's been some pretty decent historical content over the years. It's certainly better to have it in the game than not, as we've also said. But you go back and look at the ratings in 7th Gen NBA 2K, 6th Generation NBA Live 2004, as we've said before, has a lot of ridiculously low ratings for the Legends. And, of course, the active players as well, because of the switch in rating systems, the range of ratings that year from 50 to 99 in-game to 0 to 99. But the Legends were hit pretty badly with some terrible ratings. And you look at NBA 2K6, a game that I really love, has a fine assortment of historical players, but so many of them are just rated 99 overall. They all have the same shooting ratings of 99 inside scoring, and players like Bill Walton and Robert Parrish who can't dunk at all until you raise their ratings a little bit. So there's been a lot of sloppiness with the historical ratings over the years that, if you go back, they play okay, some of them for the most part, but there's still so many inaccuracies, and it goes back decades.
Let's get to the community responses again. I asked, how are you playing NBA 2K26? What modes, online, against CPU, etc.? And if you're not playing NBA 2K26, what basketball games are you playing, and how are you playing? Phil Lime 2002 states, so he's playing NBA 2K26. He states offline, and then he states my NBA, and hopefully as soon as he gets his draft classes, rosters, and sliders right, he wants to take a look at the new my GM mode. He also states that he does play online, and that when he does play online my NBA or a league with Euro Cup teams, it's a very well-managed online league, and he enjoys that. So he's playing many different ways. He's playing online and offline, and he's probably going to get the most out of this game.
Yeah, avoiding the online scene is certainly the way to go. I say that after having some... Well, look, online was fun for a few years there. It certainly became a miserable experience after a while, and from what I've heard, the connected modes in my career are no better than they were when I gave up on them. But if you can find an online league, a private league like that, where everybody is willing to play a good competitive style of basketball and have sportsmanship and all of that stuff, and it's a well-run league and everything, yeah, that is so much better.
T Gentry at Bucky_T states, for 2K26, I'm playing the My NBA season mode offline against the CPU. Might do an online playoff match with my cousin down the line. I know that with NBA 2K25, he played the Jordan era roster, and he was using the Charlotte Hornets, and it was cool to see him posting highlights, of using Muggsy Bogues and Larry Johnson, etc. So hopefully he can also get some enjoyment out of the My NBA Eras rosters, but they will need tweaks, as he knows. We've talked about it before, or he'll have to download a more finished, more accurate roster. He also states that he's still playing 2K25, 2K14 for Xbox 360 and Xbox One, Live 15 and 16, 2K9, 2K13, 2K16, NCAA Basketball 10, and many more. That is a true virtual hardwood hooper, Andrew. He's playing different games across different consoles, and I know he loves his basketball video games.
Love that rotation. Love the variety. That's what we do too.
Mike P for 3 at Mike Pritchard states, I'm playing a lot of Play Now games versus the CPU on NBA 2K26, tweaking rosters and sliders. I'm actually really enjoying 2K26 despite playing on last gen. It's a lot more fun than last year. I intend on starting a franchise once preseason is over and roster set. I want to say that I appreciate the way Mike plays, and the same with Sweet Jones _OTF, who's been in the top 10 before. Sometimes he posts his highlights on Twitter, because it gives you and I a look on what's still going on last gen, right? Because they're still playing the PS4 versions. Those versions are still bought by countless people out there, right? Because not everybody has a PS5. Not everybody believes that it was worth upgrading to a PS5. So I like looking in on that footage that they share, because it lets me know what's going on with that version of the game.
Yeah, that is good to know. I mean, we do have access to that version, the digital version, by virtue of pre-ordering. I haven't actually installed it, I will admit, but we do actually have access to it. I haven't bothered to look in, but maybe I should, especially with Mike saying that he's having so much fun. And I love that he's playing the Play Now games, the exhibition games. I love career modes. I love franchise modes. It's great to sink your teeth into those modes and have that journey and play games that count. And of course, my team is fun for a lot of people as well, and I've enjoyed that in years gone by. But over the past couple of years, I've really come to enjoy playing once-off exhibitions again, often with classic teams, but sometimes with the current teams, especially when I go back and play an old release. Yeah, I've been having a lot of fun with exhibition games, so that's cool to see.
Yeah, and how often have we played exhibition games over the last 5 years over Parsec?
Oh, yeah. Well, it's a fun matchup every time, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Stephen at the Live King states, my career in Play Now and working on sliders, then off to my NBA. I know that he likes the game speed this year. I'm guessing that this is the best he's felt about the 2K games on PS5 Gen, and he's already submitted some great highlights for the NLSC Top 10, and I know he's just like me. He loves to mess with the sliders to try to get the gameplay experience as close to comfortable as he can get it, and I think he does a good job with that. Coach Parker states, offline, my GM, Sub-Zero Shane at Sub-Zero Shane says, been mostly playing offline my career on 2K26. That and my NBA by far the most enjoyable modes every year for me. And I think a lot of people feel that way, Andrew, right? I think a lot of people get frustrated by the online scene for a lot of the reasons that I've mentioned, even on just this episode. And, I still think the NBA is the draw, right? That's why it's so heavy in the advertising and whatnot. It's why when you boot up the game, it's not a random My Player. In the menus, it's SGA, right? And whatnot on your screen. So the NBA is still the draw. And that's what people like to watch. And that's what they like to emulate on the basketball court. It's nice to see that people are utilizing the depth in this game. And what have I said so many times? One of 2K's biggest strengths is the depth. They just have so many different modes, so much content and whatnot that it's bound to hit you in one way or another. Like for my brothers and I, we get to do the roster customization, and we get to use legends, right? And we, get to create the court and create the jerseys, all of that. And then, if we don't want to do that or we want to break from that, there's the WNBA fantasy draft, right? We can play the WNBA. If we don't want to do that, we can do roster editing and player DNA stuff and all of that. Or maybe we want to jump into Play Now or whatever. And then for those people online, it's like, you know what? Maybe I don't want to do that. Maybe I want to jump into my team, or maybe I want to jump into my GM, or maybe I want to jump into the online scene. So, or my career, whatever. Like, it's just the depth is their biggest strength, whether it's done well, whether the on-court product is great or not. There's still just a lot of depth.
Absolutely. The NBA is undoubtedly the draw. Anybody who says otherwise really doesn't know what they're talking about, or is really just straight up lying. It goes back to the camera angles, who plays on broadcast cam, or it's wrong to play on broadcast cam. Similarly, a lot of people say, who's playing my NBA or the NBA side of my career? The answer is a lot of people, and understandably so. There's a lot to enjoy there. Just because you're not enjoying a mode, that doesn't mean it has no value. It doesn't mean that other people aren't playing it. Of course, other people say, who's playing online, who's playing my team? Apparently nobody's playing anything in these games. To hear these people tell it, yeah, let's not judge people for the modes they play. Every way of playing this game, every mode is valid. The whole reason for having this depth, as you said, is to cater to these different preferences. That's what we want out of these games, so let's stop this gatekeeping.
Danny10 at DannyGG10 states, I'm switching things up, sticking with 2K25. I also have open games in 2K20, 17, and 15, and NBA Live 18. I won't buy 2K26 yet. I'll wait for them to fix some issues in the upcoming updates. I only play career mode. So, yep, he's playing a bunch of different games across NBA Live and the NBA 2K series, so that's nice to see. Justin Francis at JustinFrancis7 states, a mix of my NBA errors and my team. Depends on how much time I have. I've enjoyed getting shots up in my team with Sabrina and KD. In errors, trying to make something of the 03 Clippers. Good luck with that. A more talented team than their real-life record would suggest, thanks to injuries and other issues. And if you remember correctly, one of my favorite teams to put on the floor, Andrew, for NBA 2K25 was the Clippers. In fact, I connected with WizCard Rush using that team. And I remember doing a lot of stuff with Corey Maggette and Elton Brand and whatnot. And that team is actually a very fun video game team, but they underachieved. And the same thing with teams like, the 06, 07, 07, 08 Nuggets, the Iverson, Carmelo, Kenyon Martin, Marcus Camby, Nene, J.R. Smith teams, some of the Warriors teams from the past as well. So yeah, that's a good one to put on the floor.
Oh, quintessential video game team for sure.
Andrew at Andrew the X states 100% offline play. Playing play now at present as I get used to the game, but might get into a My NBA soon once I get slider sets sorted. Another person messing with sliders, Andrew, and another person who just really wants that NBA experience, and another player who just wants a good NBA experience. One Take Vic at One Take Vic states, I'm playing NBA 2K16 till 2K26 goes on sale. And I know somebody like NBA 2K Fadeaway, who's been in the top 10 many times for NBA 2K16 and still mods that game, would be really appreciative of that response. Massimo Capelli at Capelli_Massimo states offline against CPU, my NBA. So once again, somebody who's playing exclusively offline. Antoine Flowers at TaylorMade_ZX14 states, I'm not playing NBA 2K26. Matter of fact, this is the first time I've not purchased the game on release day in at least 25 years. Between the sloppy mechanics, microtransactions, and the killing of third-party modding engines, I only play offline. I'm kind of done with the franchise. I'll get it on $20 sale. And that's a very important point, Andrew, is that each year 2K goes on a ridiculous sale around the holidays. And I want to say that I've seen it go even under like $10. At the very least under 15. I've seen it go for like $9.99. So if you can wait for the right deal, you can absolutely get this game for under 20 or even at times under $10.
And that's a good move for collectors, especially on PC, because as we've noted before, once the servers go down, once online support ends, it gets delisted from the Steam store, you can still find it in other places, the grey market, and of course Amazon sometimes still sells keys afterwards. The price often gets jacked up as those digital copies disappear. So yeah, if you do want to collect the game, if you do want to have that complete collection to go back to the game years later, especially on PC, wait for those sales and grab it for $5 to $10.
Royce at Royce Brink 14 states, not playing 2K26, playing a lot of ESPN basketball 2K4 on PS2, 2K9 on PS3, 2K7 also on PS3, still trying to finish World Tour on Street Hoops on PS2 with French Lick Team, and I've gone back to Playgrounds 2 on PS4, as has Rizcard Rush and people like Kid Cash in the community. They've been playing that game online and actually having a lot of fun and posting some cool highlights. He continues about Playgrounds 2, playing to try to get the players up to gold, so lots of exhibition and season, but playing to get guys to gold tier, also playing against and to embarrass LeBron, KD, Curry, and others. So it sounds like he's using Legends to try to embarrass those players. Also March Madness 01 on PS1, a favorite game since discovering it on the show. He continues, thanks D4 and Andrew for featuring the games on the show. Yeah, and I'm also playing NCAA 09 on PS3 too. And you're welcome. I love talking about all the different games on the show and kind of doing deep dives and making recommendations. And that's part of the fun of doing this show.
Oh, no doubt. And we've been able to revisit a bunch of great games and also some oddities as well. And even the rough games are fun to revisit together because we can riff on them and then come on the show and talk about where they went wrong. And as you've said before, Derek, it's interesting to ponder what developers were thinking when they made certain design choices, when they made games a certain way, especially if it is a really weird design choice or a game is broken. How did they come to that decision? And also, of course, to look at the great games that were ahead of their time and see how they innovated and how we got to where we are now. So I love revisiting old games. It's why we talk about it on the show. It's why I do Way Back Wednesday every week, trying to do some more retrospectives. I just covered ESPN NBA Tonight, which is a game that we revisited together, Derek. I want to say it was last year, and it's interesting. It certainly has its quirks, but I do love looking back at all of those games, good, bad, and in between.
I think another cool part of looking back at some of the older games is it's just a sign of the times. You go back, and my brother and I were talking about this, and you play like some early 2000s or late 90s basketball games, and you'll hear like hard rock right?
Yeah.
And grunge, either in the arena sounds or in like the soundtrack and whatnot. And I find that just kind of a sign of the times, because you don't really see that as much now in the newer games. So it's really cool to look back at stuff like that, the stuff that was being promoted back then, the way like the menus looked, what they were trying to go for from a presentation standpoint, what they considered eye-catching at the time, what they considered advancements and enhancements with their games. Like, I love going back and looking at old games for some of those reasons.
And of course, the interactive almanac aspect, the rosters of the time, the NBA that's captured in those games. Such a nostalgic blast from the past to go through those rosters and be reminded of weird stints and memorable stints, and of course, play with them. Yeah, retro basketball gaming, we're all for it at the NLSC.
So we have one more on Twitter. Leader of the Foot Clan at aka_Chuck_Cross states that he's playing single player, salary cap, and then domination, but also a few multiplayer salary cap games. But yeah, if I jump into my team at all, Andrew, it's going to be playing domination, and I really don't have any interest in any other parts of that mode.
Moving over to Discord, Juicy Shack Meat states, my computer can't run 2K26, so I'm revisiting 2K14 PC version. I'm mostly sticking with Play Now as I try to familiarize myself with the control scheme after 10 long years away from this version. Yeah, I mean, 2K14 PC, I still think the gameplay is stronger than 2K26, so I think you're in good hands there, and just all the mods that are with that game and whatnot. You'll be able to get back into it pretty quick, because I think the gameplay is really solid in that game.
And we do have a couple more responses on Discord. Wizcard Rush states, for now, I'm holding off on getting 2K26 until a good sale comes along and mod support continues to develop. I have been playing 2K14 in the playoffs mode for this past year's playoffs as the Denver Nuggets, and he's been posting some great highlights on Discord related to that run. He also states, I have been working through the My Team dominations in 2K25, and he's currently on the Season 3 domination. And he continues, I have a few My NBA Eras games saved with retro seasons rosters available on 2K Share for 2K25 as well. And then we know he connects on Discord, which is excellent. He's always engaged with the community. He states, every week I always try to connect with a few people to host a Parsec session as well, so we can play various retro games. Careless XCI states, I have zero interest in playing 2K26. I don't have much time for gaming these days due to newborn duties, but when I do have some free time, I either mod NBA Live 06 or play My NBA Eras on 2K25. And of course, once in a while, I get the urge to play at least a couple of games of Live 2000. Some great choices there. He also states that he's still working on SIG shot functionality on NBA Live 06 PC, which he previewed a while ago.
Yeah, I love that we have that dedicated community still updating old games, because so many of these games are still worth playing and modding. Of course, there are limitations with what can be updated, and formats and rules change, so there are going to be some limitations as to how up-to-date we can get them. And of course, retro rosters have their own challenges as well, but so many great projects for old games, just breathing new life into these classics. The classics are still great to visit vanilla, I think, but with these mods, yeah, a ton of fun.
So, Andrew, I'll throw it over to you for our response on Facebook.
Yeah, Jared says, I am not playing NBA 2K26. I'm playing a combination of 2K13 with Pat the Head's mod and making NBA Showdown teams using my formulas. Yeah, Pat the Head is doing some fantastic work with NBA 2K13, decades of rosters, Olympic rosters, NBA rosters. He's got a 2026 season update in progress at the moment, I believe. Also, ABA rosters, ABL rosters, NBL rosters with George Mikan. Just a fantastic celebration of basketball history for a great game in NBA 2K13.
He helps keep those games alive, right? Because I know he did work for 2K14 as well. We love having people like him in the community, and we want to keep these classics alive and keep people playing them.
And speaking of mods, Shamgod continues to do some great work with NBA 2K14, his 2016 mod, very detailed mod that is trying to replicate the aesthetic of NBA 2K16 and have a very detailed 2016 roster update for that game. And also, Luya has just released the NBA 2K26 File Explorer, so that's going to help out with NBA 2K26 modding. Yeah, great things happening in our modding community still, Derek, with old games and new ones alike.
Yeah, I recommend not only people exploring modding and exploring these tools and downloading mods and whatnot. I also recommend people to just share their footage, right, and share their stories with the games. We have a screenshot and video section on the NLSC forums. Same with our Discord. And we want to see your clips. We want to see your gameplay, whether it's full games or highlights or whatnot. I miss the days where people shared more, right? So yeah, if you have those platforms and you have the means to share, I'd love to see more footage of your gameplay.
Definitely. Share your footage, share your screenshots, share your stories, and share tips. If you have some tips about how to get the most out of NBA 2K26, or indeed an old game that you're enjoying, and you think other people would also enjoy revisiting that game, and if you think there's a way to get the most out of that, our forum, our Discord, we're open to discussion of old games as well, tips on how to get them running with old PC games, if you have tips to get them running on newer systems, if you have tips about slider adjustments for old games, as well as NBA 2K26, obviously. Look, we're all about basketball games at the NLSC, so share your experiences, share your wisdom. But thank you again to everybody who responded to Derek's community question. We love the interaction, and once again, please keep the conversation going. In the meantime, though, that has brought us to the end of this week's show. As always, thank you for tuning in, and please join us again next week, and every week, on the NLSC, nb-live.com, our YouTube channel, or wherever you listen to podcasts. In the meantime, make sure you're following us on social media. That's where we can get in touch with us and, of course, stay up to date with all of our content. So, Derek, go ahead and plug the handles.
You can reach me on X, formerly known as Twitter, at D43G and at D4384. I'm also on the NLSC, D43, and on YouTube, D43.
As for me, I'm Andrew in the forum and Andrew NLSC on X and Blue Sky. The NLSC is on X, Facebook, and Blue Sky at the NLSC. We're also NLSC Basketball on Instagram and Threads. We're on YouTube at NBA Live Series Center. And of course, keep it locked to the NLSC itself, nb-live.com, for everything we do for basketball video games. So, thank you once again for tuning in, and until next time, I'm Andrew.
And I'm Derek.
Go get buckets, everyone!